Welcome to We Hear Her. I'm Erin Trenbeth Murray, and I'm here today with another amazing woman who is sharing her story and insights into life lessons learned. Hi there, I'm Erin Trenbeth Murray with the We Hear Her podcast for women who succeed. Today's guest is so well known, she really needs no introduction, but of course, I need to go through some of it because she's so spectacular and she is everywhere, and everyone knows and loves her. Is Mary Crafts. And I just recently have had the pleasure of getting to know Mary, I would say within, oh goodness, the last 4 or 5 months. And it is truly a privilege and an honor to get to know her and to have her part of my life and Women Who Succeed. So here is a little bit about Mary. Even though I know most of you know so much, I've got to share some of it. One of the favorite sentences that I love is that she is quite simply a living legend in Utah. From humble beginnings and dire circumstances, she invested blood, sweat, and countless tears into building what would become Utah's most celebrated catering company, Culinary Crafts, which we all know and love. That design of her starting her business has turned into multi-million dollar empire, and now her children have taken over the reins, but the basis of what she created is everywhere throughout Utah. She has been involved with so many famous people. I wanted to share a few with you that she has provided work for. um, let's see, we have quite the list: Oprah Winfrey, Sir Elton John, presidents of the United States, Fortune 500 companies, and on and on and on. Aside from her spectacular business, she has written, I think, one book right now,
My first book,
of maybe four or five. I
something
can't wait
like
to
that.
get into that. But the most impressive piece to me is how much when she meets somebody, she acts like it is the first time or the most important person in the world in that moment. And I really appreciated that so much about her. She shares in her book her journey that in July 2019, she had accomplished another major life goal when she summited Mount Kilimanjaro. So, the name of the book, I'm going to let Mary share and talk about that. And that's kind of where I'd love to start is the book, if you don't mind,
Okay,
because
sounds good.
and then we'll do some other diving in. But I'd love to hear Mary share with us the name of the book and the inspiration behind wanting to write it.
Well, the book is fairly recent because I published it in November of 22, so just a few months ago. And even though I had been writing it since I came home from Kili, and I realized that there were so many lessons for me in the particular journey that were like repeating my life lessons all over again in 7 days.
Mm.
And I just had to write them down. Like, for example, in the book, I talk about that it didn't matter what I had done in the past, that I had accomplished all those things in my bio.
Mhm.
And I would someday scream at the mountain, just like, listen, in Utah, they really like me and I'm a good person and they think I'm a badass, you know? And the mountain would say back, I don't care. I don't care what you've accomplished in the past. What are you going to bring today? And so that's just an example of one of the lessons that I brought home. And as I wrote the book, it's not a very long book. I think, a good reader could read it in 4, 5, 6
Mhm.
hours.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's what I term a how-to book. And the title of the book is Unbounded:
Yep.
From Sorrow to Summit. And I've had people ask me, well, what does that mean, unbounded? And I talk to them about, think of yourself being bound up by cords and how that would feel and how that does feel to live your life that way, wrapped up in cords of fear. Because all of us, and I've listened to so many podcasts, so many different interviews, read so many books, and there all seems to come back to that central thing of in our early years, we lay down our sense of who we are. And unless we consciously delve deep and choose to look at those beliefs, they will be with us forever.
Mhm.
And so, if your mother said to you, "Why would you do that? What were they thinking? Who do you think? Blah blah." Do that over again. You begin to feel what? The number one fear that everyone fears, and that is that we are not enough.
Mhm.
And so this is a how-to book, how to unwind those cords, how to cut through some of them just with scissors,
Yeah.
and the step-by-step process that I used. I People look at me like because of my history, I started my company at age 30, um, and that, yes, they knew about me for the hard knocks and the blood, sweat, and tears, but they also never knew the struggles that were inside of me
Mhm.
and that face that I plastered on that was so hurting inside and so afraid of everything. It's what made me an amazing caterer. I was afraid to make a mistake. I was
Well,
afraid to fail.
there's something,
Yeah,
right?
I was afraid to disappoint her. I
Yeah.
was afraid I wouldn't get paid. What if I
Right,
didn't have money?
right.
What if there was so and
Fear.
every single thing. And to be able to turn my life around and discover what it was like to rather than catering out of fear, to cater out of love. That I really wanted to do this for you. That I had the opportunity to serve you at one of your most important days of your life, and you trusted it to me, and to be there for you, to make it sure that it went flawlessly. And it was a whole shift in me and in my company.
Yeah. Well, I think, what really struck me before we started the podcast today, I asked you, is there anything that you'd prefer not to discuss? And you said straight out, well, vulnerability is number one to me. And if it's not, then I'm going against my personal
Yeah.
values. I think that is so rare to find an individual so genuine, honest, transparent. Um, how does one who does not go and climb Mount Kilimanjaro come to gain some of those skills? I mean, certainly from reading your book and your guidance and wisdom, but what would be one of the top things that you would describe that is the first step to reaching that kind of place?
I think I know how to answer this. So, if you're living this life of fear on this end of the spectrum, and you can see over there that that life of love and you know you want to get there. There truly is a passageway. And I can tell you without a doubt, the first step into the passageway is vulnerability. And I have a quote that I use in my book, and I think it's become my signature quote now because I see people using it everywhere, and that is the healing starts when the hiding stops. And when I was willing to stop hiding the things I was so afraid of about me, to open up and to let them out, the very things that I thought I had to hide were the very things that endeared me to people, that brought people in like a magnet and said, "Oh, I didn't know you felt that. I have felt that. I
Mhm,
didn't know
mhm.
I thought I was the only one."
Right.
And you begin to open that up. And I always thought, since I wrote the book and since I've been home from Killy, that I've been extremely open and vulnerable. But I tell you, Erin, once you start into this passageway, almost every day, still at age 69, I'm becoming aware of things that I hide
Mm.
still. And I'm so grateful for the awareness that sometimes I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I want to keep that one hid. What are you talking about? I have a reason, you know. And but then you take a look. Well, what is the reason? And if someone knew that about you, would they not be your friend? Or would they want to walk beside you and lift you?
Mhm.
It's a great gift. It's the greatest gift that I give myself and that I can give others. Wouldn't you love to know that you could tell me something that you've not thought of for a long time and suddenly now it's coming back to you that you've not shared with anyone, maybe not your husband or not anyone,
Mhm.
and to know that you could share it with me and I would receive it and love you even more?
Mhm. Amazing. It's I like a lot how you just described the self-awareness piece because I try so hard not to be a fear-based
Yeah,
person
right.
or to have my decisions driven by fear, but they certainly do. And then the self-talking in the head starts
Yeah,
happening a little bit. But I think one of the steps or the tools that you've just given me is the naming it, the recognizing it, calling it out for what it
yeah,
is, so that it doesn't just become habit of part of who I am as a human being. Like, I want to be able to call myself out and say, okay, I'm making this decision based out of fear, instead of just moving forward. Or yes, I am making this decision out of fear because I'm afraid,
Yeah,
because I want to hold this back.
yeah.
But naming it, I think,
Naming it,
empowers you.
recognizing
Yeah.
your fears, that's the first step for sure. You have to recognize. I remember I gave a talk in front of a group of men, um, and most of my audience are women, but this was a group of men with a few women scattered throughout. And I'm giving this talk because I do a lot of public speaking,
Yeah.
and I can just see across the audience. I'm like trying to. How come I going to touch these people? And they're just kind of like nodding a little bit, but there's this little look on their face like, yeah.
Mm.
And finally, I just thought, okay, I've got to think of something here. So there was someone in the front row that looked like he was listening. And I said, so tell me, how do you relate to this? And he said, well, I've been listening. I've been thinking about that. And he said, I think my wife feels this.
Mm.
I said, oh, your wife. And he goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you're talking about, fear of things that were physical and fear of being laughed at or fear of, this. And he goes, I don't have any of those things. He goes, but I know my wife does.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay. And I said, but I'm really sure you have probably never
Right,
felt fear of being passed over for a promotion.
right.
Well, yeah, that's not the same thing. Or you've never had a fear of, will I be able to meet all my financial needs this month? And then he was like still shaking his head, but really thinking. And then he said, wow, there are a lot of things I'm afraid of. And then suddenly the whole group just started nodding their head, this realization that men and women alike
Mhm.
have laid down these pathways in our brain from the time we were little. And if we don't look, they will continue until the day we die to control us. One of the, people ask me all the time, Mary, what is the basis of your health journey? Because at age 50,
Mhm.
I weighed 284 pounds and I was 44% fat and just on and on and on. And there wasn't any end to it. And that concept of vulnerability was my first step to acknowledge that even to my best extent of being successful and being looking like I had the perfect family and all those things, I was still struggling. And to be able to acknowledge that to people, to acknowledge it to my family, to acknowledge it to me was one of my very first steps. And it's why 19 years later, for the first time in my life, I didn't yo-yo diet.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everyone can stick to a little something for a little while, but unless you address the root of where this was coming from, it's going to come back. Not because you're a bad person or not because you have no willpower. It's just you haven't dealt with the bottom piece. And so as I did that and became healthy, now my body weight's
Mhm.
19%.
Mhm.
My blood pressure 120 over 70. I mean, I plan to live to be 105,
I
with an
believe
with
it.
an option to renew if I get there and things are still going
Option
good.
to redo.
Yeah.
Well, and I loved in your book, of certainly the descriptions at the beginning of the book, comments from your ex-husband, the emotional turmoil of the weight. It was it was the base, how do I describe it? As you unfold your book, you really begin to understand it's so much deeper than that. It's so
Yeah.
much deeper than losing,
Right. Yeah.
weight, getting on
Yeah.
Slim Fast or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not that this was about an entire holistic life journey and really doing hard work on yourself, working deep through emotions and thoughts. And it was just really empowering to me. It was excellent.
Oh, thank you. A lot of people think, oh, you must have had weight loss surgery
Mm.
or you must have been on pills from the doctor or something because nobody loses half of their body
Mm.
without something like that.
Mm.
And it did take me 6 years. There was a long time. And you went through different plateaus. But that's one of the lessons that I learned through that process that I learned again on Killy. And that is so many people set a goal that's like, I'm getting to the summit.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to lose 140 pounds. Okay, you
Yeah.
had that goal, but that goal sometimes you lose sight of it. Just like There were so many times, probably 90% of my journey up Killy, I couldn't see the summit. And so I would set little goals for myself of, 100 yards.
Mhm.
And at that point, I could stop. I could get a drink of water. I could take another breath until the guide would say, like, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, okay. But just those little goals. And the same thing with weight loss. You know what the big goal is, but the little goal of I broke mine down into 20 pounds.
Yeah.
When I would get to 20 pounds, that was a real goal for me and a marker. And I could take a breath and celebrate. And, but then the last piece of the lesson was also a piece, which is that, but unless you watch where your feet are being placed at every footstep, you will fall, you will stumble, you will get turned the wrong direction. So to use all three of those in tandem, I had to look at my feet every day and say to them, feet, where are you pointed? Are you pointed towards the gym? Are you pointed towards the fridge? Where are you pointed? And if you're not watching every day and checking yourself to say, what? But I also listened to something this morning on a podcast that I thought was just phenomenal. And she showed an illustration of a home that was under construction for 20 years. And every day the little piece was working on it. And she said, is this where you want to live? Always thinking that you're still not good enough?
Good enough.
Or do you want to live in this home? Clearly not a perfect home. It was warm and there was a fireplace. There were blankets on the sofa and it just looked
Yeah.
like such a comfortable place. And so, yes, these are things we want to work on our entire lives. At the same time, being so grateful for where we are. And it is a balance
Mhm.
that we work between.
To be where you're at in the moment and content, and then also looking ahead with goals. I love that. I think it's a good life lesson for our young women that will watch the podcast in Women Who Succeed. The determination, the push through, the small steps, the celebrating
Yeah.
those small milestones and goals to get to the ultimate. What advice would you have given your 16-year-old self if you could go back?
I've been asked that question before, and it seems like every time it's different. But if I were to tell my 16-year-old self now, I would definitely hold her by the shoulder and pull her close. I would touch her face so she would feel the nurturing that I have for her. And I would say, guess what? You make it. Guess what? You do become a badass with a purpose, with grace, with grit. You do. So just hang on to that. Hang on to the piece of knowing that you've got a lot of stuff to get through. But your struggles are not failures. Your struggles are the pathway to your growth and joy.
Oh my gosh, Mary, that was so beautiful. I mean, that is the perfect. I think we're going to close it on that because um, I think all of us as women that are in Women Who Succeed, women that are influential and established and all of those, we still have those doubts and fears.
Yeah.
We listening to your guidance is true for me as I think it would be for a 16-year-old girl, at Parowan High School.
Yeah.
So I appreciate so much you sharing the wisdom of your journey. And I encourage everyone to get Mary's book. And where can they get it?
On Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's Unbounded, From Sorrow to Summit. We all have sorrow. We also all have summits.
Mm-hmm.
And by Mary Crafts.
Well, there you go. And let's all climb our summit today. Thank you for being here for the We Hear Her podcast with Women Who Succeed. And thank you again to my guest, Mary Crafts, who is just phenomenal. And it was such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. Thanks now, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for taking the time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more about Women Who Succeed at womenwhosucceed.org. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation.